Hi everyone, channel me, let's get into it. Welcome back. Today we're talking about all the rage, all the new news, vaccine stocks, the market, and what I personally think is important to think about and look at when moving forward into the end of this year and early next year. As always, throw this video a like if you like it, get subscribed if you're not already, join the Discord. Any questions or comments during this video, leave them down in the comment section below. Let's get into it. So here we go again. Vaccine news making the rounds through the market and what everyone's talking about. This week, preliminary Moderna vaccine results announced, citing a 94% effective rate. This comes on the heels of last week's Pfizer's preliminary test results showing a 90% effective rate. And just as we saw last week with a pretty substantial bump in the market, a nice little rally, same thing early this week through the first day and a half. We've seen some slowdowns today, but it seems like people are a little bit more optimistic on future outlooks, and with a successful vaccine, maybe things can get back to normal sooner rather than later. However, just as we said last week, when a lot of the industries that have been hit hard by the pandemic and by shutdowns, travel, hospitality, airline, they saw a slight bump. We saw the opposite with stocks that have done well during this pandemic: Netflix, Zoom, stay-at-home, retailers, and similar news this week. Same thing yesterday. We saw a slight decrease in those stocks, Zoom, Netflix, and a little bit of the same today as well as the market is closing. But for a lot of people who may not be watching everything as closely or haven't been following the news for the past couple of months, although it might seem pretty easy, right? Company, huge vaccine, corona vaccine can help this pandemic, should be great news, should be an easy investment. Just put your money into any one of those vaccine companies. You should see a return. Although that may seem true, it's a little bit harder and a little bit more complicated than that. If it was that easy, anyone could do it, right? So it's not surprising to see one-day spikes off of good news. Earlier this year, when initial developments were beginning, we saw spikes there, and the news coverage was about the race to who can develop the vaccine first as they enter through phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 clinical trials. Every time a new phase was announced, a slight bump there. But if you go back and look at the historical for these companies throughout the year, they've been just going up and down, up and down, up and down. So sure, if on the very short term, right, you can catch that upswing, then yeah, there's some money to be made. But without having insider knowledge, without having insider info, it's hard to know when exactly these details will drop. And by the time they've dropped, it's probably already too late to get in. And on the other hand, if you don't catch that jump, you might get hit hard. And if you sell at the wrong time, you're gonna lose out on money. If you held the stock throughout, right, you've seen up and downs from year to now. It's not that much different than where we were before. We see Moderna and Pfizer announcing their vaccine, but still Johnson & Johnson, amongst other companies, still have yet to announce results. And if you take a look at Johnson & Johnson, they're right about where they started at the beginning of this year. Going back to what I say every video, it depends on what your investment strategy is, what you're looking for. Is it a short-term gain? Is it a short-term return? Are you just planning on buying stock for a couple days, right? Not exactly day trading day to day, but maybe a week, a couple days, you're trying to flip it, waiting on good news. Is it a 1 year period? Is it a 3 year, 5 year, 10, 20, 50 year period? You have to think about how that affects the company news that's coming out right now. So I kind of want to talk more about these vaccine companies and the state of the market moving forward and some of the expectations that we can have. So right now it seems like things are looking good. New shutdowns seem to be coming across the nation, across the United States, with cases growing and spiking once again. But this is what, like the third or fourth time that we've seen this. If we were back in March, the first time, right? Oh my God, a shutdown. Restaurants are closing, no indoor dining, what's going on? Market's gonna straight up drop, right? Those days we saw back in March, April were absolutely nuts. But now we kind of know what to expect. Companies, businesses, although they might not like it, they've learned to deal with it. So it's not a surprise, and we've kind of gotten over the shutdowns. We would expect this type of thing to happen because truthfully, the pandemic was never been under control in the United States. So this shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone. But now the news is focused on vaccine. So we have 2 initial results announced, and there's more to come as other companies release their preliminary test results. And once we move on after that, we'll probably see small spikes if that data comes back positive. If it doesn't, if let's say Johnson & Johnson vaccine has like a 30% effective rate, that might scare some people, even though we've already had positive news with Moderna and Pfizer. But moving on into that, we see FDA approvals and then the production and distribution of the actual vaccine. So there are so many moving pieces, and I think, yeah, good news will bring more confidence, will bring a bump in the market, but any piece of bad news at any one of these stages could set us back a couple weeks. So if you're investing in the short term, don't be surprised if something happens, if the FDA doesn't approve it as quickly as we expect, if there are any issues with distribution, maybe people aren't able to get the vaccine, they're not able to get their hands on it, hospitals don't have the storage capacity, whatever the holdup may be. There's so many moving pieces. This is going to be a complex rollout with a handful of companies trying to deliver billions of vaccine doses across the world. So there's still a lot to come, just as back in March, starting the initial development phase, the research phase, the clinical trials. Although we're closer now than we were back in March to the distribution of an actual vaccine, there's still a lot of work to be done. And what this means for these companies that you may be interested in investing in is we don't know. The main goal of a lot of companies, publicly traded companies, is to make a profit, return that value to their shareholders, come up with new products, new innovations to try to sell, increase their revenues, increase their profits. So we think about profits. We had this discussion a couple months ago on vaccine pricing, and it seems like a lot of these major companies will not actually make a lot of profit off of just this vaccine, which is important because this is important, but there's also another side to it. Although they might not be profiting per se off of these specific vaccines, I do believe there are opportunities beyond just this vaccine and beyond this year for companies that are able to successfully get their name out and to come out with a safe and effective coronavirus vaccine. Now, this is assuming safe and effective. If for some reason something happens down the line where the safety is put in question, where there are other issues, definitely is a possibility. I know the teams behind these are trying to make these as safe as possible. Regulators are taking all the necessary steps. But if some reason something catastrophic happens, you do not want to be caught holding bags of that company's stock, because I don't even want to speculate on the drop in the stock price that could come as a result of that. But hopefully things are good and they're able to come out with this vaccine. Right? Maybe not sell it at a loss, sell it at a net neutral or a small little profit. But this is where the discussion begins and where some of the other speculation begins. Although some of these companies haven't received government funding for the production of the vaccine, they have received pre-orders and money that has been distributed for purchases of initial doses. So that's kind of helped with some of the development costs. And also, this is one of the first mRNA vaccines that have been created. And there's some speculation that the tech and research that was put into this coronavirus vaccine can also be applied or used on other vaccines to treat other diseases. So if they're able to, down the road, build off of this research to either improve existing vaccines or come out with new vaccines for other diseases, that's another way they can use what they've learned from here, put it into other products and make profit and build sales off of that. Another way they could lead to more revenue is if this vaccine turns out to be seasonal, like a flu vaccine. So if it's not going to end up being a one-time vaccine, right? You get the vaccine and then you're covered. You don't need it again. If you need it, right, every year, maybe a different strain of corona pops up every year, then yeah, these companies will see year over year, they'll able to kind of just tweak it a little bit and then push out new doses and new vaccines. So that could be another source of profit that isn't directly tied to this first initial wave of doses. So like I said, this is assuming that everything goes smoothly from the trials to the FDA approvals to the initial rollouts and then further developments. Hopefully that is the case. As for the overall market state, people are generally hopeful. Like I said, the new shutdowns and restrictions, yeah, it will affect certain industries, don't get me wrong, but these industries have already been hit hard. And a big mistake that a lot of people made back in March was that these companies had already lost 20-30% off of their highs in January, and we could debate whether or not they were overvalued to begin with, but the stock can only get beat up so much, right? Unless they go bankrupt, they go out of business, at some point even small news will bring them up. So if you're betting on them to just keep on going further and further down, just take that into account as well. So people are already speculating, right? What are some stocks to short or to bet against when we have a vaccine and when things get back to normal? There's a list, I'll put it up on the screen for you guys to take a look at, but just keep in mind, even though retail has done pretty well with a lot of these online retailers, Amazon, Wayfair, whatever it may be, don't forget we are in holiday shopping season. And although analysts and companies know that Q4, the holiday shopping season, is typically a very good quarter for them, we don't know. Maybe we can shatter expectations, but there are a couple different factors at play here. One, a lot of people are still out of a job. They might not be looking to spend as much as they normally would. On the other hand, people are at home, so they may be spending more than they would be, as we've seen throughout the whole year with Amazon and other companies doing pretty well in their sales. So that was just a quick summary of my thoughts and the impact that these current events could have. We also have the Tesla. I'll just mention it. Tesla added to the S&P 500 finally. The same speculation that we've had the first and second time when they were first speculating and then when they didn't make it and now they made it. I think if you want to learn more, go back and read some of those articles. What they were talking about a couple months ago still apply now with how things will affect the rebalancing and Tesla's outlook. But I think right now the big news is still on the overall market economy. The pandemic is first and foremost at the front of people's minds. And I think people right now are hopeful going into the holiday season, going into next year, even though cases are rising, even though lockdowns are coming. Long story short, there's hope on the horizon. But for investors, do be wary if something does go wrong, if there are any delays. Don't be surprised if the market reacts accordingly. So that's all I have for you today, a quick midweek update. Let me know down in the comments if there's anything you missed. Let me know down in the comments if there's anything I missed that you think it's important I didn't talk about, or if you have any questions or just any other thoughts about everything that's going on. Thanks for watching. Peace.